basketball fans, it's me, DC, here for Fantasy Basketball Analyzer, help you get ready for week 17 of the NBA season and the fantasy basketball season. Soon those numbers won't match up because next week we start the All-Star break. We have some basketball games with the All-Star break, and then those two numbers don't become aligned, but we're not talking about that yet, although we will in this video. Week 17 is about to be, from a fantasy, trying to give you guys a fantasy edge, it's going to be a little bit of a bummer. That shouldn't be hard to say, but it was. We're going to break down the schedule, talk about everything we can from streaming and back-to-back, so try and get you the edge. We're going to do a little bit on waiver wire, although it's a weak week for the waiver wire. I'm not going to lie about it. So you can just check out the schedule, hit the like, hit subscribe, and come on back later if you don't really want a bunch of it, but I'm not going to blow smoke up your butts. Like, it's just not that great of a week for the waiver wire. But let's get into it, like we always do, talk about pace and defensive efficiency. The defense efficiency comes from cleaning the glass, and I want to give them credit where credit is due. Pace is from ESPN's page. It's fine. I don't have to give them special credit. Make my own numbers here, and this is what we go off to. The teams that you want to attack are at the top in the green. San Antonio, Detroit, Lakers, Golden State, Indiana. Charlotte is in that group. Nothing too shocking. Down at the bottom, Cleveland, Miami, Boston, Philly, Milwaukee. Clippers, Phoenix are just on that edge, not quite in the red, but it's all on a spectrum. We take these numbers and we apply them to the Week 17 schedule. By now, we are past halfway through the season. Hope you've been here before and you're used to seeing this. We apply them. Dark greens, where you want to go after. Light green, still a good matchup. Dark red, pinkish, varying degrees of bad, stay away from. You know, you never want to just sit someone for fantasy. They're still going to be valuable, right? Like Giannis is playing Miami right now on a screen off to the side that you can't see. I wouldn't say sit him, even though Miami has a kind of weird offense that hits sputters and stalls and whatever. And also their defense is good and their pace is slow. And so it drags people down. You don't expect that to be their best nights of the week or of the season. That doesn't mean you stay away. But when you're looking at around the edge, that's not where you want to pick up guys. Also, ADD moment. My glasses have a lot of like blue, purple reflection. I got new glasses and it's not quite working out. Let's see. Are these any better? Sure. They still reflect. Not quite the same. Anyway, so that's where you want to look at. I use this for if you're making bets, you're doing some over-unders or whatever. If you see two dark greens going after each other, say on Friday, Spurs play Detroit, there's a good matchup. This is probably going to be, it depends on where the line's set, but that should be a high-scoring, no defense type of game. There could be some good fantasy numbers in there. It's great for your DFS matchups if you're playing on DraftKings or FanDuel or Underdog or wherever you're playing, right? Two red teams going against each other of less interest. That's kind of the idea here with this. Use it as you want. Links down below. You can always come back if you're not just watching the video. Go there. Check out the Google spreadsheet. I put one out every week. Also, I buried the lead a little bit. I got into the mechanics of this and didn't do what I always say. Start out by what should be obvious, right? New Orleans only has 2 games, which means from a streaming standpoint, they're basically useless. You can't really pick someone up and only use them if they're going to stream for 2 games. Beyond that, 20 teams play 3 games. So most play 3 games. You don't have to worry about it too much if you're in a 3-game group. 9 teams are playing 4 games. That's an extra premium, especially in weekly lock leagues that most teams don't have 4 games. If you can get that extra player with that extra game in there, that will add up. 2 or 3 extra guys, 3 extra games. Most important minute in fantasy basketball is minutes played. Now, next week is All-Star break. I want to talk about this because especially if you're new in fantasy, this could be a little different and it varies by platform. Most platforms now will put the little half week going into All-Star break, week 18 of the NBA season, and week 19 of the NBA season, smush them together and call it one fantasy week, 1 week 18. You take the 2 halves and you get basically a full week. If you look at the top, Atlanta plays 2 and 2, you get a 4-game week. Boston 2 and 2, 4-game week. There are exceptions. Chicago, you'd get a 5. Cleveland, you get a 5. You see the 3 and the 2. There's worse. There's Detroit with a 1 and a 2. You only get a 3-game week. Now, why I'm mentioning this, and it might be different on your platform, but I want you to go ahead and check and make sure you know how it's happening. Also, it could have changed from year to year. For Yahoo, if you're in a weekly locks league, which I understand is a smaller fraction of it, but it's worth noting, your roster locks like normal on Monday. You can still make a change when week 19 of the NBA season, the second half of fantasy week 18, you can actually change those rosters, even though they're weekly lock. So you're in the same head-to-head matchup against someone, make a swap, make some changes, which means you could use a Chicago and a Cleveland player in the same slot and create a 6-game week and give you a significant advantage, especially if they were someone from Detroit you're going against. On ESPN in the past, you've been not been able to switch that. That could change. Also, most of you guys don't play in a weekly lock league. I think it's great for people who are getting into the game and people that maybe have an obsessive nature with fantasy basketball. Sometimes it's helpful being a weekly lock league where you don't have to agonize over each daily choice. Many of you are in daily change leagues, so you don't necessarily have to worry about this as much, but know they're combined. Think about that ahead. So you're seeing a lot of red there on the side grid, and I've got 2 weeks showing. It's something special that's happening with All-Star break. Back to our regular programming. We talked about strength of schedule. New Orleans had 2 games. We'll go on and look at back-to-backs. So not too many back-to-backs this week, which I generally consider a good thing. If you're going after it for fantasy, Brooklyn, Chicago got the Monday. Oh, and Oklahoma got that Monday, Tuesday back-to-back to start the week. Then there's kind of this little stair step up. You'll see Minnesota, Milwaukee. So there's a couple teams you can target that get you a back-to-back. Otherwise, Friday, Saturday has a very heavy back-to-back schedule. Part of that is that Friday has 11 games, so it's just not a good streaming day. Most of the teams are playing. 22 teams are playing. So most of your real roster is going to be in your lineup. You don't really have to worry about targeting that. So I can't really recommend thinking, oh, there's a back-to-back, I'll pick someone up. You're not going to use anyone for Friday. You don't want to see this many back-to-backs in general. I get it's the weekend and programming, but really part of it is the NBA staying away from Sunday. That's Super Bowl Sunday there. So there's only 2 games, only 4 teams playing after that. So the weekend is front-loaded with games. Friday's going to be a stay away. Our usual concern teams, or do they have a back-to-back? Not a lot of people on that list. Golden State? Nope. Clippers? Nope. Lakers? Nope. New Orleans? No, they only have 2 games. So we don't really have to worry about this. Are there going to be some characters here or there? Brooklyn, 2 games, yes, but as of tonight, Kyrie didn't play today anyway. Calf soreness or trade excuses. Unclear at this point. KD's still hurt. So we're not worried about them resting something. Chicago doesn't really do it, although Levine did it earlier in the season. He should be okay. So we don't have to worry about that part too much. So like Luka's got the hurt heel. I don't know that they're going to rest him at the back-to-back Sacramento. I think it's probably just going to depend on how his foot is because it's a heliocentric system and they really need him there. So without those concerns, we'll just go ahead and talk about streaming. So if you look at the bottom of the grid here, let's go over what it looks like. Monday's 8. A lot of people call that a good streaming day. It might be valuable, especially this week. But Tuesday's 6, Wednesday's 9, Thursday's 4, Friday's 11. We talked about that. Saturday's 9, Sunday's 2. So the 9 and 11 and 9, you're not really going to get much use out of a waiver pickup. Maybe you can. Maybe you got some injuries or something like that you're dealing with. But otherwise, it's Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday that you really want to get after. Sunday, which we talked about, only has 4 teams playing. Super Bowl Sunday. So Memphis, Toronto, Boston, Detroit. Those teams are at a premium from a fantasy standpoint. If you want to pick someone up, you'll get a little extra edge at the end of the week to give you an extra little boost to go over it. None of those teams, though, have like a great obvious schedule. You can see all these teams that have the Tuesday, Thursdays matchups. Memphis gets a Tuesday and a Sunday, but am I going to say pick someone up for the whole week and you'll get to use them this day and then this day and there are other games on the 11-game week? I can't really recommend it. It doesn't make sense in that way. It's probably, unfortunately, just take the best player available if you want to. There's not going to be a great way to get these edges. So if you want to consider like Monday, because of the 8 games, Brooklyn gets a bit more interesting. They get the Clippers, they get Phoenix, to Chicago. You get 3 games in 4 nights to start the week. That's pretty valuable. So I would target some of those teams. Atlanta doesn't have it quite as good, but Chicago does, right? You see those teams with those 2 goals. That's really where I'm going after it, but there's not an obvious. Lakers don't have that extra Monday game to give you the little extra kick. So if you can grab someone from Brooklyn, and we'll talk about it. If you can grab someone from Chicago, maybe Caruso's still out there on your wire or something like that. Patrick Williams, and you just hope you get a game where he's playing aggressive and not sitting back too far. You can look for that. But again, it's not really popping, which is going to make it not that great of a waiver week until there's a trade. Because also the trade deadline is during this week. Sometimes, and if you see the shorthand, people can get confused. You're used to the trade deadline being the All-Star break, but it's not. The trade deadline is February 9th, the NBA trade deadline. Yahoo's default, I think ESPN's default is February 17th, so unless your league changed it. But do check where your fantasy trade deadline is. But the NBA trade deadline is falling in this week, week 17. So there might be some moves, and that's actually where I recommend making your waivers. So let's talk about the waiver wire. For the week 17 waiver wire, I got to be honest with you. I don't have a lot of names that I can go out and fully endorse. I don't report to a website. I report to you guys and trying to help you. So I don't have to worry about typing up column inches and getting enough names in this list. I put names in here when I believe in it. I want us all to go out and win our week, right? That's the goal. And I don't think there's a lot of good options out there. Just burning waiver moves to do it doesn't really make sense. I've got some speculative ads that I really just want you to put on your watch list. Don't burn the waiver move. Don't waste your waiver slot if you don't have to. Some of you have season long caps. I want to do it right now. My number one guy right now, and this is the most small sample size I've maybe ever given for a waiver move, Cam Thomas. I just watched Washington and Brooklyn play on the TV slightly off to this corner that you can't see. He got 44 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. He had 4 3-pointers in 29 minutes. It was a great game. Before that, 19 points. Before that, 21 points. He's 10% rostered. He's available in 90% of leagues. And Brooklyn has that good schedule. I mean, Clippers, Phoenix, Chicago. You're not like loving the matchups, but it's 3 games in 4 nights, 2 of them on the low volume days. They avoid the Friday 11 game glut completely. So at least that last game against Philly on Saturday is a 9-game week. It's worth a roll of the dice. Kyrie's out a little bit. If a trade happens, does it keep going? Maybe. I don't think he's going to score 44. Let's not be crazy. Odds are you pick him up, you end up dropping him. But it's 10% as a recording, which is already up 8%, which is largely probably because of that game. I don't think it's, 19, 1, and 2 is okay, but it's mostly scoring. I'd rather I'm in a points league than a category league. But no one's going to be like, oh, I don't want 44 points and 4 3-pointers. Like, that's fine. You'll take it. You shot 69%. It's nice. Otherwise, it's other guys I talked to you about. Kenny Martin Jr. for Houston. 20-6, 18-7, 15-3. If the graphic shows 2-4 right now, that's because this game's like live. It doesn't seem like it's a great game for him against OKC right now. But I don't have it on. I'm recording to you. It's Saturday night as of this recording. Thing is, Houston doesn't have a great schedule. They've got 3 games. It's Sacramento, and then Miami. You like the 2 matchups against Sacramento. None of them are on the great streaming days. And that's kind of the theme of these names. I mentioned Kenny Martin before. 43% roster, available in 60% of leagues. So shallower leagues, he's out there. I think he probably should be picked up for how well he's playing, but still not a great ad for this week. I want to run through some of the other names that I'm just seeing trending. And I'll just kind of throw out split, just gut reaction, just so I'm not missing something you're considering or whatever. Larry Nance Jr.'s hot pickup. I see he's been adding like 7,700 leagues. Well, the Pelicans only have 2 games next week. It's fine. You want to add them. At least Atlanta's on a good streaming day, but you're not doing it to get the edge for this week. You're making a season-long pickup. Quentin Grimes for New York. I think he's probably more of a watch. He's playing all right now. 25% roster, available in 3/4 of leagues. I think some of that might be he's playing all right, and what do the Knicks do? Do they trade for OG Anunoby? Jordan Watford, I don't think it really needs it. Kevin Martin, talked about it. Sorry, I said Kevin Martin? Kenyon Martin. Dorian Finney-Smith. He's not doing anything amazing for Dallas, and if he gets traded away, as the trade rumors say, if he ends up going to Miami or something like that, I don't think that actually helps his value, so I'm not saying pick him up. Aaron Nesmith is fine, but Indiana, again, not a great schedule. 3 games, not the low volume days we're targeting. So, Drew Eubanks has been fine, but I don't think it's amazing. And again, Portland, 3 games, not a good streaming days. There aren't any names that are jumping out at me that I'm saying you have to go get. And so I just think you keep your powder dry a little bit. Let's talk about some guys you could look at. Quentin Grimes, we talked about it. The rumors are now maybe New York is not trying to move him. They're trying to potentially do something else. So does RJ Barrett go in an OG deal? I don't know yet. Maybe by the time it's out, something will change and this will be a little obsolete. I think it's fine if you want to pick him up because he's playing well and hope that something more happens. New York has 3 games. They play Orlando on a low volume day on Tuesday. Maybe something happens. I'm not too worried about it. If you need the matchup, go for it. But none of this is great, right? Zach Collins, do you think Jakob Poeltl gets traded? I wore the shirt because soon it already makes almost no sense, but it might make even less sense if Jakob Poeltl's no longer on the Spurs. Zach Collins could be more valuable then if he's starting center, depending on what comes back in the deal. But I don't know that it's happening. I don't think Collins is worth a pickup if it doesn't happen. If you want to do it speculative, fine, but just know that a lot of these speculative moves might not be anything. We talked about Mark Williams the other week. If Mason Plumlee goes, I'm a bit more interested to see what happens for the big man in Charlotte, but I don't know for sure. Now, Isaiah Jackson. Does Indiana end up moving him now that Turner's locked in for 2 years? Technically, Turner's deal doesn't mean he can't be traded, but it doesn't seem like that's the way Indiana's going. He was happy to get his money. They paid him more now. I bet he does get traded on his contract. It is structured in that way, but I don't know that it's happening this week. Maybe they move someone else for that, but maybe not. If they structure the deal to trade him, maybe they're just going to keep their bigs. They got a cool thing going in Indiana. They're just trying to grow something. They might not be worried about it unless someone really came with a great offer. Does all this make for the most scintillating YouTube video? No. But there's no point in me lying to you guys. If an interesting trade comes and jumps out, leave a comment, hit me up on Twitter. I'll try and jump in and do a video this week around the trade deadline if there's something that I think warrants it, right? Like, if Kyrie moves, it's still Kyrie. He's not going to change your fantasy value. You're still going to have the superstar that you are hoping plays. So it's got to be something a little different where it pops. Like, I didn't break in for a Rui video. I thought he's fine. Do I think it helped Denny more? Yeah, but that's because I think Denny's a better player than Rui. Denny's playing well. He's out there on waiver wire list. We've talked about him other weeks. Rui's fine. I don't think any of that like really shakes things up. Precious Achiuwa is valuable right now for Toronto. We talked about him last week. If Toronto moves other parts and his minutes stay up, sure, but we already talked about him. Like, I'm not seeing anything right now, but if you see something that I missed, please leave it in a comment. We're all growing the community together. Maybe you saw something. I can leave a comment whether I agree or disagree. Other people will do it too. That helps. If not, I'll be back when something happens. Thank you guys for watching. And you know what I want you to do? Go out and win your week. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, please hit the like button and leave a comment down below. It helps me grow the channel. If you want more videos like this, hit subscribe or even the little bell will give you alerts. And I'll be back soon with another video for you.